This isn't just a story imagined by one author. TV adaptations are all not faithful to the novel. Following Ba Jie, around 100 monks over the next 5 centuries, the historical account of Zhang gradually transformed, enriched with supernatural deeds, mythical beings, and battles with monsters. Obviously, doesn't look anything like Sun Wukong, a ripped monkey figure wielding a sword, the transformation from scholar to monkey, that his anus is so wide it fell out. Okay, I know what this looks like. Journey to the West, Xiyouji, is one of China's 4 great classical novels, with the most famous version compiled over 400 years ago in 1592. Today, this text serves as the foundation for everything related to Xiyouji, from TV adaptations to video games like Black Myth Wukong. But calling it one of the 4 great novels is a bit of a misnomer. This isn't just a story imagined by one author. It's a tale that has evolved throughout centuries of retellings, each version adapting to the era's culture and values. In this series, I'm taking you through the rich history of Xiyouji across different periods, right up to its modern interpretations. We'll dive into history, but to be clear, this isn't a scholarly presentation. At the end of the day, I'm just a fat boy summarising what I've read, so expect some bias in how I frame the narrative. If we wanted a truly comprehensive study, we would be here for 50 years. But before I begin on my personal digital journey to the West, a disclaimer. I am not a Chinese national, I am a Singaporean. This means I didn't grow up with the 1986 Xiyouji TV series endlessly rerunning on Chinese television, nor did I watch many Chinese mythology shows like Investiture of the Gods, Feng Shen Yan Yi. This is an advantage when it comes to novel and historical accuracy because I notice what Chinese people tend to do is conflate Xiyouji lore with details borrowed from other TV shows, instead of confirming the detail in the 1592 novel. For instance, in the original 1592 novel, Lang Shen's full name is never specified as Yang Jian, nor is his iconic third eye ever mentioned. These details come from the later Feng Shen Yan Yi, not Xiyouji. Similarly, the novel doesn't refer to Chang'e as a single goddess. Instead, Chang'e is a title held by several deities. Even Anthony Yu's renowned translation has problems like this. For example, a line like 两边的仙妹是月里嫦娥 is somehow translated as and the immortal sisters on both sides of him are the lunar goddesses and Chang'e, which isn't quite accurate. Since I am not Chinese, I also don't have a Chinese soft power agenda. I don't feel the need to make Xiyouji more palatable to Western audiences, like some Chinese do in accepting translations like Xiyouji being translated as monkey or Sun Wukong as Monkey King. Some people will accept a dilution of the original essence if it means getting to market it better, though Chinese soft power is a topic for another day. It's also crucial to note that Xiyouji TV adaptations are all not faithful to the novel. They're just storylines, power dynamics, relationships, and even add romantic subplots to fit modern tastes and moral standards. It's a very normal thing to do considering that the story is 400 years old. Thus, I urge you to set aside your preconceived notions, empty your mind of all thoughts, and approach this with the same curiosity and open mind you had as a child. Let's rewind the clock all the way back to the Three Kingdoms era where this journey truly begins. In the year 250, Zhu Shixing was ordained at the White Horse Temple, Baima Si, and became the first monk of Han ethnicity in China. Zhu Shixing took on the religious name of Ba Jie. Yes, the same pronunciation as Zhu Ba Jie in the 1592 journey to the West, with a different Zhu. Although tasked with passing down Buddhist teachings, he soon realized that the scriptures they possessed were incomplete translations. Upon learning of the existence of complete, untranslated versions in the West, he embarked on a journey with his disciples towards the kingdom of Khotan, which on the modern-day map is somewhere in Xinjiang, and thus began what can be considered the first real-life journey to the West. Following Pa Jie, around 100 monks over the next 5 centuries, well, a lot more than that considering their unnamed disciples, ventured westwards in search of Buddhist scriptures, at least according to existing records. The last of these documented pilgrims was an envoy called Che Feng Chao, originally part of a delegation sent by the Chinese emperor to a country called Jibin. The journey began in the year 750. While the other 40 envoys went back, Feng Chao fell seriously ill and had to stay behind. He eventually became a monk, adopting the name Fa Jie, a different Jie from Pa Jie, just to clarify. After years of studying various scriptures, he began his return journey to China, bringing back several sutras and a tooth relic. Upon his arrival in 790, he was given the name Wukong, the same Wukong in Sun Wukong. Why was he the last? Likely because of the great anti-Buddhist persecution in the following century, compounded by the turbulence of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period, which led to the decline of many traditions. But among those hundreds of recorded pilgrims, possibly the most legendary was Zhang. You see, unlike most other pilgrims who had official permission and support, their request to travel was denied. Emperor Taizong, having recently seized the throne through fratricide, had imposed temporary travel restrictions to prevent further uprisings or conspiracies. Defying an imperial decree was typically considered high treason, punishable by a death sentence. So the other monks in Zhang's group decided to stay behind. However, driven by unanswered questions in the existing religious texts, Zhang chose to defy the ban and went westwards anyway. At the age of 27, in either 627 or 629, he left Chang'an alone, determined to seek the original, untranslated Sanskrit scriptures from India. Zhang travelled for nearly 2 decades, traversing 110 countries and covering a distance of 50,000 li, or about 25,000 kilometers. According to the biographies written by his disciples, he studied under numerous Buddhist masters, visited sacred sites, expounded the Dharma, converted heretics and brigands, and triumphed over scholastics in debates. Indian Buddhists even bestowed him the honorary titles Mahayana Deva, the celestial being of the great vehicle, and Moksha Deva, a celestial being of deliverance. When Zhang finally returned in the year 645, Emperor Taizong openly welcomed him in recognition of his achievements. Zhang brought back more than 600 Sanskrit texts, 7 statues of the Buddha, and more than 100 Sarira relics. Through his work, Records of the Western Region, the Da Tang Xiyouji, he also preserved the geography, climates, people, language, history, culture, and customs in those 110 countries. Declining high-ranking civil appointments, Zhang retired to a monastery, dedicating the remainder of his life to translating scriptures. By the time of his passing at age 70, in the year 664, he had translated over 75 scriptures across 1,347 scrolls into Chinese, revolutionizing the study of Buddhism in East Asia. Zhang's pilgrimage was retold in murals, cave carvings, statues, poems, plays, and prose. Over the 900 years before Xiyouji was compiled into its famous 100-chapter form, the historical account of Zhang gradually transformed, enriched with supernatural deeds, mythical beings, and battles with monsters. In many writings, Zhang was depicted as having a deep fondness for the Heart Sutra, Volume 92 of the Taiping Guangji, the extensive records of the Taiping era, which was compiled around the year 976 to 983, contains a brief account of Zhang meeting an old monk covered in sores, his body oozing pus and blood. The old man transmitted the Heart Sutra to Zhang. Upon reciting, mountains and streams flattened before him. Roads became clear and passable, tigers and leopards vanished, and demons and spirits disappeared. Thus, Zhang reached the land of Buddha. At some point thereafter, nobody knows exactly how or when, Zhang began to be depicted traveling with a companion. You see, since most of the regular population were illiterate, and that, well, by the fact that you are watching this, also did find sources other than books to be more engaging even if they could read. Tales would be shared orally by storytellers in markets, stalls and tea houses, both for entertainment and information. Because there are no recordings of this oral literature, we cannot accurately pinpoint how Zhang's story morphed in time, but we can still trace its transformation through various surviving artifacts. At the Jade Emperor Peak in Shandong, there is a carving dated to the year 1105 that shows a monk collecting scriptures with a horse. Behind him is a small figure, alongside an inscription in large characters. 观音菩萨命唐三藏. Guanyin Bodhisattva orders Tang San Zang. Then in smaller characters, 取经回来, returning with the scriptures. In the Zhongshan grottos in Shanxi, we find another stone carving from the year 1112 depicting a monk accompanied by a rope companion leading a horse, praying to Guanyin Bodhisattva. And the story becomes even clearer when we bring color into the equation. On a stone container dated to the year 961, found in the temple Zhongxing Si in Zhejiang, we see a monk followed by a companion dressed in white robes leading a white horse. Interestingly, it is not immediately apparent that the companion resembles a monkey. Instead, the white robes and scholarly image seem to be a defining characteristic of this figure, a depiction that remained common before the Yuan Dynasty, which started in the year 1279. Given the destruction of many Buddhist temples and scriptures due to various imperial and internal conflicts over the centuries, we must look beyond China to regions where Buddhism also spread to piece together the evolution of Zhang's myth. The Buddhist temple Kouzanji in Kyoto holds two novelettes considered precursors to the 1592 journey to the west. The earlier of these texts is believed to date back to the late Song Dynasty, or just before the year 1279. This novelette, titled The Story of How San Zang of the Great Tang Procures the Scriptures, 大唐三藏取经诗话, is notable for its title ending in 诗话, suggesting that it was likely used for oral literature. This 17-chapter novelette introduces a white-robed scholar, note the words, 白衣秀才, who reveals himself as the 84,000 bronze-headed and iron four-headed macaque king of Ziyun Cave in Huaguo Mountain. The immediate parallels to the later Xiyouji is that this scholar, like Sun Wukong, resides in Huaguo Mountain or Flowerfruit Mountain. However, because chapter 1 of the novelette is lost, the exact motivations behind the scholar's decision to aid the monk remain unclear. But much like Sun Wukong, the scholar is an immortal with powers such as transformation, martial arts, and the ability to ascend physically to heaven. Although the scholar is a lot weaker in comparison, but many elements found in the 1592 version also appear in this earlier novelette, including a golden ringed staff and an alms bow, possibly an earlier version of the white bone Jing or Bai Gu Jing, defeating enemies by invading their stomachs, a deep sand god, Shen Sha Shen, that may be a precursor to Sha Wu Jing, the mentioning of a mother of ghost children, Gui Zimu, a kingdom of women and tests of faith by bodhisattvas, the theft of immortal peaches, and the ginseng fruit with its childlike features. Though there are differences like Zhang being the scumbag here, as he was the one who asked the scholar to steal the immortal peaches. And while the Dharma Master technically travels with 5 other monks, they play little to no significant role in the story. There is no Zhu Ba Jie, Sha Wu Jing, or Bai Long Ma here, just 5 ordinary monks. Typically, each chapter begins with the scholar warning the Dharma Master of an impending danger. They exchange a brief dialogue, after which the scholar resolves the issue and the journey continues. By the end of the 17 chapters, the 6 monks and the scholar join the ranks in heaven, and the human emperor gives the Dharma Master the name San Zang Fa Shi, and bestows upon the scholar the title 钢筋铁骨大圣, steel-muscled and iron-boned great sage. It should be apparent that Xuan Zang's story had changed significantly by this time, with his role in obtaining the scriptures greatly diminished compared to historical accounts. And because we are still far from the familiar narrative of the 1592 Xiyouji, there are two key differences in this earlier version though, worth noting. One is the white-robed scholar's autonomy. Unlike Sun Wukong, who is famously subjugated by the tightening headband and ritualistically accepts Xuan Zang as his master, the white-robed scholar does not appear to be subservient to the Dharma master. He is a Taoist immortal who joins the journey of his own volition. Although the scholar refers to the Dharma master as 我师, meaning my teacher in the text, this can simply mean that Xuan Zang is someone he learns from, much like addressing a professor today. 我师 is rendered as master in the Charles S. Weevil translation, which I think carries more hierarchical connotations. Secondly, English translations of this novelette often seem to project modern interpretations of Xiyouji onto this earlier text. Notably, the white-robed scholar is consistently referred to as Monke. Anthony Yu, in his translation, even describes the character as a simian figure, despite there being no textual evidence to suggest that the scholar looks like a monkey. The text simply describes him as a white-robed scholar, and after he mentions being the macaque king, the passage says that we shall call him Hou Xingzhe, or monkey pilgrim. However, the only clue about his appearance comes in chapter 3 when the Dharma master inquires about the scholar's age. The scholar claims to have witnessed the Yellow River clear 9 times, implying that he is thousands of years old. So the Dharma master responded, "So young and already telling lies," suggesting that the scholar appears youthful without any implication of monkeyness. This could be a bit of an inconsistency considering that he accepted the scholar's offer to join the party in the previous chapter without questioning his age or abilities. But even in subsequent chapters, neither humans nor Yaoguais remark on the scholar's appearance, implying that he doesn't look any different from humans. If you remember, the companion in the murals we saw earlier tells us that Xuan Zang's companion does not appear to look completely like a monkey yet. And in the 17th chapter novelette, he is called Hou Xingzhe because, well, that's what he claims he is. And the proof for this can be found over in Fujian, in a small village called Huangdun Cun. In the mountains, there is a shrine dedicated to the Bai Yi Xiu Cai, the white-robed scholar within the Tongtian Pavilion. The pavilion likely dates to the Ming Dynasty or Qing Dynasty, so 14th century or later, but the wooden idol, measuring 1.03 meters tall, has an unknown date. Obviously, doesn't look anything like Sun Wukong, but note the name of the pavilion, Tongtian, which roughly means having abilities on the level of heaven. And going behind this pavilion, you'll find this... Okay, I know what this looks like, but it's supposed to be a hat, though I'm not sure if it's this kind of particular hat. On the stone, you'll find the inscription Tong Tian Da Sheng, which is just one word difference from the Qi Tian Da Sheng, while having the same meaning. Over at the abandoned city of Karakoto, we then find a clay statue estimated to be Western Xia Dynasty, that is, between the years 1038 to 1227. White robes, what seems to be a golden line on a hat or his hair, and a face that is mostly human, though arguably somewhat monkey-like. Of course, this doesn't mean that every region is going to share the same imagery. Moving to Japan, in the temple Daitokuji in Kyoto, scroll number 77 of 100 from images of the 500 arats, dated late 12th century, depicts a monk on a white horse accompanied by a more monkey-like companion, but it is in black robes. To the left, we see a much more monstrous-looking guide, maybe an antecedent to Sha Wu Jing. At least for me, I think there is a consistency to say that the companion slowly transformed into a monkey figure sometime by the Yuan dynasty. In the Xuan Jiwen, the memoirs of a travelling official, which is a mid-13th century story unrelated to Zang about a farmer who turned into a Buddhist monk, there is an eulogy that references elements of Journey to the West. This includes the name San Zang, what may be an earlier version of the meeting with Sha Wu Jing, yakshas, and heavenly assistants. Here, the monkey pilgrim is referenced in the phrase Hu Hai Po Zhong, Hou Xing Fu. References like this mean that the scripture-seeking stories has been told so many times that other literature assumes that it was something the audience should know. Poet LiuKezhuang, writing in the 1250s, references the monkey pilgrim twice. The first one in this poem in the sentence, 取经凡侯行者, which roughly translates to fetch scriptures, it was necessary to trouble the monkey pilgrim. Then in another, in the phrase 貌丑是侯行者, or a face as ugly as the monkey pilgrim. So it's intriguing that this author assumes that the audience is already familiar with the monkey pilgrim. In the first poem, he may even be critiquing how popular media of the time had diminished Xuanzang's historical significance, reducing him to a mere bystander of the monkey pilgrim's exploits. In the second poem, the description of the monkey pilgrim's appearance as ugly suggests that his image perhaps had evolved into something distinctly simian, indicating that he was now being perceived more explicitly as a monkey. Then, the temple Kaiyuan Si in Quanzhou, Fujian, features a 1237 stone pagoda depicting a ribbed monkey figure wielding a sword, possibly with a headband, overshadowing a monk in that tiny top right corner who seems to be riding a cloud or maybe something else. If this is part of the evolution to Sun Wukong, and if the monk behind is supposed to be Xuanzang, then it certainly shows the popularity of the monkey figure overshadowing the real-life pilgrim. That perhaps by this time, just before the Yuan dynasty, the monkey was already perceived by many as the main character. So, more cave paintings. At the Dayun Temple in the Purple Gold Mountains, there's a carving dated to the year 1293, placing it right at the start of the Yuan dynasty. And in the center, we see Guan Yin Bodhisattva being worshipped. In the bottom right, there is an official, apparently not Xuanzang, accompanied by a horse and a companion holding maybe a stick of some kind. Then on the bottom left, there's a monk, possibly Xuanzang, followed by a companion holding a horse who is also wielding a stick with what looks like a goat attached. And I don't know why, but there are people who say this is 猪八戒. Honestly, I can't tell what makes this 猪八戒 or why there even is an official to the right in the first place. Could versions where both the scholar and a monkey are in the party? I don't know, but these questions weren't asked, so I have no answers. Over in the Qinglong Temple in Jishan County, there's a mural from 1289. It shows 3 figures and a white horse. The figure at the front is likely Xuanzang, while the identities of the middle companion remain speculative. However, the figure at the back appears more monkey-like, with a sharper mouth, a headband, and a sash around the waist, indicating a shift toward the monkey depiction. Then, we have Mogao Caves in Gansu province, also known as the Thousand Buddha Grottos. It is still debated whether some of these grottos were constructed during the Western Xia or the Yuan dynasty, but if we were to lean towards the Yuan dynasty timeline, and to be sure this is just a theory, it shows an even clearer evolution of the monkey pilgrim's imagery. In Yulin Cave number 2, there's a painting of Guan Yin facing a river to the right, and in the bottom right corner, near a praying Xuanzang, you can see his disciple holding horse reins. While the details are not very clear, the figure has a brownish hue, suggesting a more monkey-like appearance than Xuan. And in Yulin Cave number 3, on a mural featuring Samantabhadra, Puxian Pusa, there's a more distinct depiction of Xuan with a clearly monkey-like companion beside a white horse. The transformation from scholar to monkey becomes even more apparent here. Cave 2 of the East Thousand Buddha Caves, we find Xuan with his hands clasped in prayer, accompanied by a disciple next to the horse, now holding a rod. In the ancient Buddha cave, yet another similar situation. So while we've been mostly using Buddhist material to understand how Xuan story transformed throughout various retellings, religion's influence on the tale has also shifted as we transition from the Yuan dynasty to the Ming dynasty. Switching from a Mongol-led Yuan dynasty to a Han Chinese-led Ming dynasty, the popular religions changed from primarily Tibetan Buddhism to Chinese folk religion and the three teachings: Confucianism, Taoism, and Chinese Buddhism. The attempt to harmonize the three teachings is a major theme for art and literature in this period, which means moving toward a more circular and relatable storytelling approach. Buddhism, and as a byproduct, Xuanzang's importance in the story had fallen off to let his disciples take a larger part in the story. So for example, a full party of 5 pilgrims, including the horse, can be seen on this Cizhou ware pillow from the late Yuan dynasty. We can see clear defining features of a monkey-like figure holding a rod, a pig-like figure with a snout and ears with a rake, and a monk with a pilu head on a horse, and another monk behind. And because of the boom in published media, the Journey to the West story also started to take on less variable forms. A significant example is a 24-scene Chinese opera play, or 杂剧, discovered in the Japanese Cabinet Library in 1927. Believed to be written by playwright Yang Jingxian in the 15th century, the 杂剧 was simply titled 西游记, the same wording and name for Journey to the West in the 1592 publication. Note how the name had removed Changshan Zang here to re-emphasize the journey. And though this is much shorter than the 100-chapter publication, much of the stories in the 24-act play seem to have found their way there. From Acts 1 to 6, this includes Xuanzang's reincarnation from a heavenly being, the murder of his father and Xuanzang's revenge plot, receiving Guan Ying's summon to seek the scriptures, being given the name Sanzang, a golden kasaya, and a 9-ringed staff. From Acts 7 to 10, a dragon who got transformed into a horse as a disciple, a separate group of celestial protectors who gives protection buffs to Sanzang from the sky, a monkey Yao Guai fighting heavenly troops who becomes trapped under a mountain, the monkey Yao Guai being given the name Sun Wukong, and a binding spell that makes sure the Yao Guai will accompany and protect Sanzang. Act 11 covers the recruitment of the Sha Heshang, Sha Monk, and the slaying of a Yao Guai at Yellowwind Mountain, Huang Feng Shan. In Act 12, they meet the Red Boy, Hong Hai who pretends to be a child and deceives the group. The disciples go towards Guan Yin to find help to capture Red Boy. Acts 13 to 16 cover the recruitment of Chu Pa Tie, who deceived a family to marry their daughter. Here, he is powerful enough that they require help from Lang Shen. Acts 17 to 20 include the temptation of the Land of Women and the encounter with Iron Fan Princess Tie Shan Gongzhu at the Flaming Mountain, Huoyan Shan. Acts 21 to 24 concludes the story by receiving the scriptures from Buddha and the acceptance of the pilgrims into heaven. But despite these similarities in the scenario, the 杂剧 has many more differences, starting with it being a lot more raunchy and comedic, replete with cursing and sexual innuendo. Unlike the honourable but bad-tempered Sun Wukong in the 1592 novel, 杂剧 Sun Wukong abducted a woman to force a marriage, and the reason he wreaked havoc in heaven was to please her. 杂剧 Sun Wukong wasn't born from a rock, and he had 4 other siblings. His elder brother is called Qi Tian Da Sheng, while he is Tong Tian Da Sheng. power scaling wise, Zha-Ju Sun Wukong is also much weaker. In Act 21, Wukong meets an old woman who is well versed in Buddhist knowledge, and when the old woman tries to test Wukong's knowledge by asking if he has a heart, Wukong replies that his anus is so wide it fell out. In the Zha-Ju, Xuan Zang's journey has completely transformed from an individual's dedication to spiritual enlightenment into a story that is more relatable to the common man. Instead of illegally seeking scriptures to understand some abstract meaning, Xuan Zang did so because he was simply given the mission by greater beings. On one hand, this change speaks to the Confucianist ideal of loyalty to a higher purpose. You see, the emperors of China were considered an extension of the natural state of the universe, and they were given the mandate of heaven, Tianming, the same wording of Tianming as Tianming Ren in Black Myth.
莫非就是大王说的那个天命人？
Natural disasters or poverty among the common folk were basically seen as signs of heaven being unhappy about the current ruler's performance. Xuan Zang in the Zha-Ju, being handed the mission and his dedication to it, follows the loyalty to the emperor, of respect to the mandate of heaven, and the worship of the cosmological entities of heaven and earth. But on the other hand, deities and Buddhas alike have been given human form, and the abstract parts of religion have been minimized. In the secularization and streamlining of these religious flavors, they become objects of our ridicule and criticism in the Zha-Ju. Why would Buddha advise people to be kind to people but use curses and heavenly troops to essentially enslave people? Unlike the white-robed scholar who was more compassionate, Sun Wukong is not much different from a soldier, following orders to kill monsters. What makes him worthy of being a deity? These kinds of criticisms are everywhere in the Zha-Ju scenario, and one example is in chapter 22, where one scripture the group received was the Steamed Buns Noodle Soup Sutra, which obviously doesn't exist in real life. Another effect of humanizing these gods is that because the heavenly court is a replica of the human imperial courts, it served as satire and criticism of governance in the real world. Characters like Zhu Bajie and Iron Fan Princess were originally high-ranking figures in the heavenly court, but because they rebelled against heaven and decided to stay in the human realm, they become Yao Guais who terrorized ordinary people. It reflects the moral decay, internal conflicts and fragmentation within the ruling class, while simultaneously showing a certain distrust in the imperial system as in real life. However, the ideal towards the political system is actually pretty simple, as illustrated by the ending poems. It's just asking for a stable government that ensures peace, allowing ordinary folks to farm and prosper. Perhaps more interestingly, despite the stark differences in tone and experience between the Zha-Ju and the later 1592 novel, many of the social criticisms present in this earlier play were carried over into the novel. But the 1592 novel didn't just borrow stories from the Zha-Ju. Volume 13,139 of the Yongle Dadian, an encyclopedia compiled from the years 1403 to 1408, contained a story about the Dragon King being beheaded, identical in scenario to chapter 10 in the 1592 novel. That the words Xiyouji, Journey to the West, is listed as the source also suggests that maybe by this time Xiyouji may have been some kind of text that writers and artists could replicate. And his theory is at least supported by the existence of the mid-15th century Pak Tonsa On Hei, a Korean text for studying Chinese. One of the teaching materials included a conversation of two monks discussing Xiyouji as a good read, and there are references to Che Chi Guo, an episode where the pilgrims compete against three Yao Guais who use unorthodox Taoist methods to deceive a country. That would be chapters 44 to 46 of the 1592 novel. And everything I presented so far is evidence that Xiyouji is more than just the imagination of any single individual. At the least, a large portion of the inspirations and evolutions can be traced, even if many of them have been lost to history. So finally, it seems like we have traced back Xiyouji's development back to the Ming Dynasty, the years 1368 to 1644. Yet, this brings us to a conundrum. Who wrote Xiyouji first? The earliest version we have of the 100-chapter complete Xiyouji was published in 1592 by a publishing house in Nanjing called Shidetang. However, in the first chapter of the publication, right on the first page, the last line in the very first poem wrote, "Read Tale of Woes Dispelled on Journey West." 须看西游是二传. Huh? The first thing that reading a novel tells you is to read another novel, and that other novel is also Journey West. The reference text, the full name being 唐三藏西游是二传, the Chronicle of Deliverances in Tang San Zang's Journey to the West, is known as the Zhu version, after its writer Zhu Dingchen, and likely dates to the same period. But nobody knows exactly when because the title page and table of contents are missing. Comprising 10 volumes of 67 chapters, the Zhu text has an extensive story of Xuan Zang's celestial origins, his abandonment due to the murder of his father, and his subsequent quest for revenge. Curiously, this story appeared as Chapter 9 in an abridged Qing version of Xiyouji with the name 西游正道书, translated as Book for the Illumination of Tao by the Westward Journey, dated around 1662. But this chapter isn't in the 1592 version. This normally isn't a big deal, but that the title of the Zhu text was explicitly named in the 1592 version just makes things confusing. And to make this even more confusing to the modern reader, Chapter 9 is included in the modern translated versions, such as the one on C text and Anthony Yu's 2012 English translation. And we're not done yet. There's still the Yang version, named after its author Yang Zhihe, titled 西游唐三藏出生传, Journey to the West, Tang San Zang's biography. It is dated to no later than 1633, consisting of 4 volumes and 40 chapters. It's even shorter than the Zhu version. But what's interesting about this version is that it's part of a 四游记, 4 journeys, a compilation of 4 novels, each representing one cardinal direction. So, there's the 1592 version with 100 chapters, the Zhu version with 69 chapters and an unknown date, and the Yang version with 40 chapters, unknown date. It's still debated which one comes first, but each of them have passages and linguistic similarities along with roughly the same narrative. And I'm not going to go through all the differences like the formats, the differences in language or the illustrations, because I don't want to read another 579 pages. I mean, do you? Well, I'm more interested in the question. Was Xiyouji written by someone, or was it just a compilation of stories throughout the ages? I think, given what I've presented so far, it's fair to say that the scenarios, at the very least, were taken from existing literature. And keep in mind, I haven't gone through all the theories for the evolution of Xiyouji. Some of the other theories include the tales of a white ape known for seducing women, the water fiend Wu Zhiqi, who was imprisoned under a mountain twice, the Hanuman theory, the Lingyin monastery which created a legend of monkeys learning Buddhist scriptures, or the tomb in Fujian dedicated to the Qi Tian Dasheng and the Tong Tian Dasheng. There's just way too much to cover. And to make things even more confusing, the 1592 print technically doesn't have an author. According to the preface by Chen Yuanzhi, nobody knows who wrote the book. It could be someone from a prince's household, or the likes of the 8 squires, or even the prince himself. He also questions if there is no author's name due to how vulgar the language is. Today, the prevailing theory is that it was penned by Wu Sheng-en, a minor official who lived from 1500 to 1582, who was also known as a poet and a writer. However, even this is challenged as people thought there were inconsistencies between his other works and the 1592 text. Even within the 1592 work, there's speculation that the 1592 version might have been the product of multiple contributors. Why, for instance, does it have exactly 100 chapters? Tang Sanzang's journey is structured around the symbolic 81 ordeals, 9981难, calculated and referenced as 9 times 9 to represent the completion. The text itself references symbolic phrases like 99成功, completion through the power of 9, and 99归真, returning to the truth through 9. Given the importance of the number 9, wouldn't 99 chapters have been more thematically appropriate? There are also chapters that feel out of place or redundant. Chapter 64 stands out as an oddity. If it were to be removed entirely, the plot wouldn't change at all. The poems in that chapter lack the depth and relevance seen in others, and notably, the audio it describes isn't mentioned in the earliest 1592 publication. And as discussed earlier, the exclusion of the chapter 9 revenge plot is also debated. And we may never know for sure. But the scholarly debates over the authorship should at least be a testament to how the 1592 version remains the definitive version despite the other versions. Even if the scenarios have appeared in other editions, episodes in the 1592 novel/compilation are not only longer and more elaborate, but there are more episodes, drama, and subplots not found in other editions. In addition, the 1592 novel had remarkable consistency in adding relevant prose, incorporation of the three teachings, coherent character growth, and other themes while retaining a clear sense of direction. It's the version that has been the most influential, serving as the basis for the first modern critical edition published by Beijing's Writer Publishing House in 1954, over 300 years later. And thus, we can finally talk about the classic novel itself in the next video. We'll be summarizing the story, talking about its poetry, themes, religion, and characters. Before then, talking about more modern adaptations.